Special call meeting is called to order. Thursday, the 7th of September, 2006. It's 5:40 p.m. Councilwoman Bell is present, Councilman Hodge, Vice Mayor Losner, Councilwoman Garner, and Councilman Porter. Under 3A is the summary of our town hall meetings. Mr. Vice Mayor? Mr.
Mayor, do you mind if I make a couple of announcements before we start so I don't forget? First of all, I'd like to we had a hearing today on the Redlands lawsuit. There were 4 counts in that complaint to begin with, and Joe had 2 of them dismissed today. So that was a good day. Not a total victory, but a good, he knocked out 2 of the counts. And now the time has come where we have to make a decision regarding counterclaims and what we're going to do. So I'd like to request an executive session to be scheduled by the clerk at the convenience of the council. We're under a 20-day time period, so we need to do it fairly quickly. And that is it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr.
Vice Mayor?
All right. We have in our packages, and I believe that as these meetings have progressed, for those of you who weren't at all of the meetings, or some of the meetings, we have summaries of some of the questions that were raised as part of the public presentation. You may recall the laundry list of ballot questions that were preliminarily approved by council to be taken out for public discourse. There are 2 that have been removed, and I want to call your attention to that. The first is the question of removing the internal auditor, and that was the direction of council, so that was never discussed at public meetings. And as a result of research conducted by our attorneys, the question of whether or not a member of council whose term is not expiring can appear on the vice mayor ballot has been removed. There are potential issues of dual office holding and also into campaign finance issues. So that question is not part of the final package that's before us. The attorneys gave us a recommendation this morning that not go forward as being too risky. We have a very unusual system now for that co-designation, and the recommendation was that, on 2 bases. Number 1, campaign finance, that if you're not running for an office, you really can't go out and raise money and campaign for a title, and that there's the potential claim of dual office holding for a non-incumbent. I mean, a non-expiring council member. Those who have to run for a seat are eligible to go out, campaign, raise money, and say, elect me and bestow this title on me. In the next election, Ms. Waldman and I have nothing to campaign for. Our seats aren't expiring, so we can't go raise money and can't campaign, if you will, for a title. There was even some question that if we did that, it might trigger the resign to run provisions, and certainly that's not what was intended. So the effect of that is that, as an example, in this next election, Ms. Waldman and I, who are the 2 members whose terms do not expire, cannot appear on a vice mayor ballot. So that is not before us for consideration. So what we are left with is the question of conversion over a 2-year period of conversion of council member seats, the at-large seats, into 2 residential area seats, the question of term of office for mayor and council, the annexation clarification, and there was a recommendation that we clean up the issue that the office of vice mayor was not a standalone office to be campaigned for. It was an ancillary designation to a council seat. I think probably what I'd like to do is just entertain questions from council as to how some of these evolved, what some of the public input was, and some of the ins and outs of the questions that are before us.
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I could just add one other thing, which is in terms of even though there was a lot of conversation at the Charter Review Commission regarding the actual boundaries of the districts, the way the charter is set up is that those districts are actually done by the council by ordinance. And so that basically, if the voters voted to add seats 5 and 6 as residential districts, the council would come back and designate those districts by ordinance and make adjustments to the existing 4 by ordinance. It's not part of anything that would appear on the ballot, the actual definition of the districts themselves.
The proposed ordinance would track the maps, which is a separate issue from adjusting lines to existing neighborhood seats. That's an entirely separate issue. And just for frame of reference, the map on the left demonstrates the districts as they currently exist, the seats as they currently exist. The map on the right incorporates the proposed 2 new residential area seats, as well as the recommendations of the committee as to line adjustments to be enacted by ordinance. And let me, if I might, point those out on the right-hand map. You'll note that the dividing line east of US 1 to Redwood Road between the southwest area and the northwest area seat has been adjusted downward from about 13th Street down to Campbell Drive. So the line dividing, the proposed line to divide the northwest and southwest has been moved 5 to 8 blocks and in some places southward to increase the northwest area and to reduce the spread of the southwest seat held by Mr. Hodge. We'll draw your attention to the map on the left. This little box, this area here, which we call the Homestead 50, and Venetia are currently designated as part of the southwest area seat. Those have been proposed to be transferred to what we commonly call the Villages seat, which is the seat currently held by Mr. Porter. Those line adjustments are not to be dealt with tonight. They are recommendations to be considered by ordinance in the near future, and that's not part of the ballot question, but the map on the right demonstrates the end effect if everything is in fact adopted. Questions on any of the adjustments?
So, yes, I have a question.
Yes.
So what we're saying is then we would determine that we needed to change some boundaries and add some seats in charter, but then we would actually do that by ordinance in council. Like if we're going to make all the, add the 2 east side seats and take away the at-large seats, and that's done by ordinance only?
No. The ability to create new seats is only vested upon voter approval.
Right.
And then that approval is implemented through ordinance.
Okay.
The definition of the new seats would be done by ordinance.
Okay.
And we're talking about new seats, not adjustment of lines, but new seats carved out of the green seat. We already have prepared, and we have part of our package, the legal descriptions to be utilized in the ordinance that would implement, upon approval of voters, would implement the 2 new east side seats. Also, at a later date, irrespective of whether or not those particular charter proposals are adopted, there would be a consideration for the adjustment of the lines that I discussed, the north-south dividing line between northwest and southwest, and then the movement of Venetia and some of those other areas from the southwest into the villages. Also, I forgot to demonstrate, if you notice this little green area here, that area is currently in the villages seat. It is a pod contained in the Villages of Homestead DRI, Keysgate, and that is proposed such that a subdivision is not divided down one side of the street, so that depending on where you live in the subdivision determines the seat for which you may choose to run.
I know when I attended last night and I had questions brought up to me, was that brought up today at all about keeping one at-large seat so that there's a seat that people can go anywhere all over the city, can run in. I know that we definitely have to add an additional east side seat. That's just the sheer numbers. But taking into account, we need another east side seat, and then keep one at-large seat. Was that, because then that means anybody can run in that at-large seat. So if two council people were running against each other, they could go in that seat, or two people in the community, or whomever could go to that particular at-large seat. And I like that idea of keeping one at-large seat that would apply to anybody in the city. This way, it's like, and also having 4 seats on the east and only 1 on the northwest and 1 on the south. That's 4 seats, and then if quite frankly, if you have 4 seats on the east and then a mayor who lives on the east, you've got 5 east side seats and 2 on the west. So I think that it's not just a matter of dividing by population. You also need to take into account the square miles of the city. So I think that that's something that we really do need, and I know we came a little bit late to the game in that, but I wanted to know if there was much conversation about that today, because I really think that's very valid. It's a valid argument that we do add that 1 east side seat and then keep 1 at-large seat.
To answer your question, and those issues came up at not only the meeting last night out at the minor league clubhouse, but it was touched upon at the Villages of Homestead meeting. But to directly answer your question, yes, it was discussed at great length this morning in the Charter Review Committee meeting. I share your concerns, and in hindsight, I would tend to be more supportive of a scenario where we didn't transition into 2 new seats, that we did retain 1 at-large seat. I mean, I can envision any number of situations where, depending on where you live, you could in effect be precluded from running for office for 4 years. It was the will of the majority of the committee not to readdress that issue. And there was discussion about that, well, you're diluting Waterstone's seat. If you leave that as 1 large seat, you're diluting that seat. And I even had proposed that let's delay the transition of that second at-large seat to a neighborhood seat to 2011. The best way I can answer your question is that my opinion did not carry a majority vote, and the will of the committee was to place this before council with the understanding that council here at the 11th hour did have the ability to address those issues, but the committee did not see fit to make any adjustment in what had been promoted. As you heard me say last night, as Mr. Hodge heard me say last night, the committee was mostly, my perception, interested in large measure in population equality more so than practical reality, electoral fairness, and some of the issues that I have, that as this process has progressed, I've come to believe that we should retain an at-large seat.
But as
the committee disagreed.
And this council can recommend that.
Absolutely.
Yes. And it's not necessarily just to benefit people sitting here on council, it's for the community as well. But you could have a scenario of, and I hate to bring in certain people, but it could be a Jeff Judy scenario.
It could be Jeff Judy.
Right. It could be a Linda Steve scenario. It could be 2 other people in the community who don't want to run against each other. And you always leave that at-large seat. So there's one option. And I like, because once again, it's an option. You always have one option open. And I guess it's an idea that maybe came a bit late, but I really think that this council would be wise to consider that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I think it would have some merit, your concern would have some merit if we had true districts. But we're still running at large. And you may not want to, anyone in the city that want to run can run. Don't have to be in that large seat, you just got to, wherever you live at, decide to run, but you still got to run citywide. So there's no advantages, disadvantages, and I don't see anybody losing anything as a result of it, because you still got to get the majority of the entire community support to get elected. So you're not isolating any community. I see no advantages, disadvantages in maintaining that large seat because you have no true districts. And I think that's an issue that the committee did not address, because I think if you're looking at advantages and disadvantages, there's a possibility today where the registered voters on the east side can carry the whole show. They can get a slate of people, band together, and win the election every year.
Yeah, but more
We can
so,
do that.
but more so if everybody lives on the east side. You're going to have 4 seats of people who live on the east side, whereas if you have an at-large seat, I think you're giving a little bit more choice to the voters. That's just my opinion.
But it's citywide voting.
Right, but
You
still,
got the campaign citywide.
still have it designated.
Yeah.
Yeah, designated.
So,
And even so, I think maybe another position would be is to recognize that perhaps that central district, as the building boom grows, the darker blue, is not going to be populated as quickly as we thought, and perhaps there could be a delay in the phasing in of that second seat.
There's a lot of empty houses right now.
Yeah, that was a concern that was discussed at length, not only last night, but at the meeting this morning.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Question, with the thought process behind the committee, when they came up, obviously, like the mayor said, these are neighborhood restrictions on the candidates. They're not districts, true districts, they're just neighborhood seats. Now, obviously, in the future, when the city's in a position where it may need to go to a true district, you've already got the footprint there. Is that what, opinion from the committee, you think they're going in that direction more so?
Not this time. There was absolutely no discussion whatsoever for planning for a transition to a single-member district. I don't know how else to answer you, it was never on the table.
Never there. Because, the position with the at-large seat, although it gives, the at-large could come, 2 at-larges could come from the Keys Gate, an at-large and the neighborhood seat. You're not going to be able to say that an at-large seat is necessarily going to go back to the southwest side or back to the northwest side. It's a floating seat that allows a candidate to run from anywhere. If he doesn't want to challenge it, if Judy and I have to run against each other, and I don't want to challenge
It's a valve, if you will.
Well, if I don't want to challenge each other, one of us doesn't have to run, or we have to challenge each other for that particular neighborhood because that's where we both live. Or, like you said, move a year in advance. So, I guess if you're going to go ahead and bite the bullet, maybe just go ahead and bite the bullet. But there's arguments both ways, but thank you.
Absolutely, and we had some good interchange last night between the public that was there. I think we were in session for a couple of hours last night on this and a couple of the other issues. I guess, are there any comments or questions from the public? I see some familiar faces from last night, and I want to recognize for the record we have a couple of the committee members present. We have John Burgess and Claire Waterman Powell with us. And I want to especially thank all of them, but in particular Claire, who's been commuting quite a distance to meet some of our meetings, and we'll have some presentations later on that to recognize the hard work of the committee.
Mr. Mayor, if I could suggest...
I've made my objection very clear about the 4-year term for the mayor, effective not 2009, but 2007. I think we've gone back and forth on that.
The proposal was for 09.
For 09, and that's my only other concern. I think the next mayor of the city, Homestead,
What I was going to suggest was that...
should get a 4-year term, effective 2007. I'd like to see that happen.
I concur.
What I was going to suggest was that there's basically 5 questions that have been recommended by the committee. Maybe we could go through each one of them, answer any questions that you have, and then you could sort of vote on whether you want to move that way or another way on each one, and then sort of see where we go. The first, if that's all right with you?
So we discussed the first one.
Yeah, the first one is the conversion of the general council member seats. Is there any other questions about how that works, or? Okay.
Well, let me ask you, I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Mayor. The question still has yet to be decided by the council whether or not the seat stays at large, or there's been a discussion as to whether or not to save an at large out, and it's been unclear as to what is the final on that. So I mean, can we answer them one at a time, or you want to do them all?
No, I think that's exactly right.
do one at a time.
Have an extra discussion on that item, and somebody should either sort of move the committee recommendation or move something in the alternative, and then we'll know where we're...
I'll move the committee recommendation as written, going ahead and assign all seats.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, well, it's on the table. We have a
on the
motion,
table.
motion by Mr. Porter and a second by the mayor for further discussion on whether to adopt the committee recommendation as it stands or amend that to provide for a delay in the conversion or leave one at large. Any initial further comments from proposals from council? Ms. Bell?
These questions that are concerning the seats also are written together with the terms, and
They all work together, though.
The questions themselves
Yeah.
are on page 10 of the ordinance.
Beginning on page 10.
Okay.
And each one is individual.
Okay.
And the questions are as they would appear on the ballot or limited to wording and so forth.
It's on 13.
Although the language that's actually in the charter
13 is
very complicated, and it sort of all works together because things sort of move
And
different.
these questions are crafted such that if any one of them failed, the others do not, and the others are passed, there is not conflict within the charter in any manner whatsoever. And that was a very difficult job of drafting to be accomplished to without talking about contingencies, that to build into the language those contingencies, and those issues are contained in the enabling ordinances and proposed actual text of the charter language change in text.
I really made myself clear on how I feel about
Mr. Hunt?
retaining one at-large seat.
Okay. Mr. Porter, we know, okay?
You just call the question, I guess we'll vote on them one at a time.
I'd like to take it one at a time. Let's see if there's any public comment. Mr. Burgess?
Well, I was just bringing up what a Waterfront resident this morning pointed out. If this is defeated and we stay with what we have, then the east side is going to remain as green, and we're going to have 30,000 people being represented.
That's not necessarily the case, John, because the council, by ordinance, has the ability to adjust the districts. So in other words, if, let's say, all of this fails, and the council comes back and says, okay, we have 4 residential seats and 2 at-large seats, the council then, by ordinance, can come back and adjust the boundaries of the districts to accomplish whatever they want to, accomplish. So not necessarily that it will stay like that if this fails.
We could shove part of Waterstone into my seat and move the villages into part of Keysgate. Yeah. Yeah.
Concerns brought up by citizens. He was concerned that being such a large area over there, if they get defeated, then we need to see
Now,
where we're going to go from there.
however, in that regard, Richard, if that provision fails, the timing is such that we would be precluded from adjusting the lines for an entire year.
For this election.
That's right. So for this election, this coming council election, the status quo would remain in place.
I think that's done 1 year prior to the first winter.
That's right. We have the 1-year bar.
That's in the current charter.
That's
You can't
right.
adjust within
Can't.
1 year of an election.
So that is one of the issues if this fails, that we can't adjust those lines after the failure date. All right, Ms. Garner, you. All right. Any further public comment? Any final comments from council? Well, Patty, or no, Patty, I'm sorry. I'm used to calling on Patty for these charter questions. We can have a roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Bell?
No.
Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Councilwoman Garner?
Yes.
Councilman Porter?
Yes.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lautner?
No.
That was a no? Okay, motion carries.
All right, thank you. The next issue is term of office of council members. And in a nutshell, I think it provides that commencing with those whose terms are up for election in the '07 cycle, that council members would all receive a 4-year term. In effect, reducing the vice mayor ballot question to just that, who shall serve as vice mayor. It would not determine who receives 2 and who receives 4 years. Terms would still be staggered. We would still have an election every 2 years. And there is the balancing provision that the transitional seat that we just addressed, if it's adopted, would be limited to a 2-year term, so that we would establish the 3-and-3 balance every 2-year cycle. My perspective, if anybody's interested, from the flavor of the public meetings, is I think there's a pretty even split in the community on that issue. If I had to guess, it's almost 50-50, and it varied by audience, but I think overall it's right down the middle. And let's get a motion on the floor.
Move the recommendation of the Charter Review Committee.
Motion by Mayor Warren, second by Councilman Hodge for adoption of ballot question B, term of office of council members. Any further comments from council? Ms. Bell?
I've spoken on that as well.
Mr. Hodge?
Everybody that spoke to me does not like the change.
Mr. Hodge?
Obviously, I'm in support for the obvious reasons which have been discussed. It has been argued on both sides, but I do see from the opinion of once an individual comes into office, having that experience myself, being new to the office, it does take time to get things done, and government is slow, and it has taught me patience. So it does take time to really get your feet wet and know what you're doing and start making progress. So, and especially when you're dealing with large projects and projects that take any amount of time, it's favorable to be able to have that extra time to get done what needs to get done, and as well as you deal with the issues of the election. What you're actually getting something done 1 year, and then it's sometimes we talked about this in some of the meetings, how things come to a halt in an election year, and maybe that will slow down, and there could be more progress between the years just going, and keep the city moving forward. So I do support it.
Thank you. Mr. Porter?
Well, I think I support, and obviously for the city to function well, to stabilize, it helps stabilize the city a lot. And for those of us that have had the luxury of 4-year terms, we all know how much more effective you can be when you can focus your eye on the ball and not have to worry about constantly running for re-election. So I think it's a good question to ask. I'm like you, Steve. It will get an answer. It may not be the right answer, but in our minds, but I think it is a split question. But I think we have to ask it. So,
Ms. Garner?
No, I agree with what they both said.
Mayor Warren?
Agree with the comments.
I have conceptually been supportive of a 4-year term, and certainly was the first time we had this in committee 4 years ago. I had proposed at the committee level that the immediate adoption would seem perhaps perceived as a little self-serving, that if adopted could be seen as giving an incumbent advantage perhaps. And I had proposed a delay in this effective date until 2009 to give our time to our community to continue to grow out, and the opportunity for many other of our new residents to become involved, and certainly for us here to continue our good work and see about that re-election. I'm going to vote for it because I want to know what the people say. I think it should have been delayed, but I'm willing to support it, to put it out there for public decision. All right, Any public comments before we vote?
I think that would be the...
Please, it's still a special call, and we're supposed to observe the formalities.
Powell, 2274 Southeast 27th Drive in Keysgate. We've mentioned that with the previous Charter Review Committee, very complicated changes, very in-depth, in some cases even at a presentation to the council, there was confusion about what it said and how they implement it. Here we really have some simple, I think, uncomplicated ballot questions. And if you remember and remember statistics, all the charter questions in the previous go-around, they were voted in 79, 80, 90%. So it wasn't really an emotional, to me they voted on candidates and here's some questions and it's easy to say yes to everything. I think here we'll have close to a 50-50 situation and we'll find out the majority of the voters, they're for a year. And I support it. I'm going to go out there, and I think we need to sell the positive. We had some very vocal people participating against it. No way my community would never have it. It makes good sense. And I will be out there right after you put it on the ballot to tell everybody the message. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further from the public? Anything further from council? Mr. Porter.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Mayor, just a follow-up question to what Mr. Powell brought up. From the, you look at the numbers of the people that participated, they're fairly small by comparison.
Absolutely.
And so we really, the public input that we received up to this point has been very small, dismal, which is typical of almost all meetings as we see here tonight, or today. How are we going to get, Mr. Manager, this information out to the community from the city's perspective, and who's going to pay for it to get the message out? I mean, because listen, it's an issue that is relative to the city. So whose responsibility is it to get this information to the voters?
If I might jump in first. Go jump in. Last time we had the series of town hall meetings before we adopted them for ballot. And then we went out and again did a couple of things. Another series of town hall meetings, which are relatively inexpensive to do. And, we have some very good staff that spends a lot of time after hours helping me with those. And I would envision we would do an educational campaign at two levels: a town hall meeting and a mass mailing. And last time we tried to use the mass mailing as the killing two birds with one stone. By doing a first-class mailing to every registered voter and having those mailings returned if the voter has gone, it enables us to purge our voter rolls. That's the only way that we can do that, either by death certificate or first-class mail addressed to the voter, returned, move left no forwarding address, addressee unknown. And I'm a firm believer that once we purge our rolls, the voting turnout in Homestead will be much higher than any of us imagine when we get those people off the rolls. To my knowledge and understanding, the elections department just does not remove. They may monitor deaths, but beyond that, unless you go register somewhere else, unfortunately, so many people don't go re-register and don't bother to vote, that our rolls are probably really inflated. So it's kind of a two-edged. The first-class mailing will enable us to accomplish two things: the educational component of these proposals, as well as helping us clear our rolls of those who are no longer here.
Well, the point that I would like to see talked about a little bit more is just the 4-year terms is, certainly it would possibly appear to just benefit the council members, but it really doesn't. I mean, you get an opportunity to help management have clear, solid direction for a period of time, which allows you to set a goal and then ultimately accomplish that goal. And that has tremendous benefit to the community. And that's one of the things that, from that perspective and that perspective only, I'd like to have the community at least analyze it from that thought process. Exclude Jeff Porter as trying to get 4 more years in his term. I've been here 10 years, almost 10 years. So, and I've been able to see the net positive effect of being here for those 10 years. I've been able to start projects and finish projects, I hope. And Steve and the mayor and Linda, but if you've been in Amanda's or Norman's shoes where you've had that 2-year cycle and you ran for a year, and then you have another 2-year cycle and you run for a year, 50% of your time is spent trying to get yourself back in office instead of spending that time trying to do something would have a net positive effect. And I think that's good for the city overall. Certainly it's good for the elected official too, but it gives us a chance. And that's one thing I'd like for the community to think about when they think about this. Not just, it's not for Jeff Porter, because, if I get lucky enough to serve 2 more years, that's great. If I get lucky enough to serve 4 more years, that's great. But it does have a positive effect on the staff's ability to set goals, target goals, and achieve goals without having a philosophy change midstream. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'm off of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further from council?
I just want to say one thing. Yeah, I kind of have been very mixed about this myself, but I'm not getting any support for this one item. That's the one item that I've gotten more, not that there's been a terrible lot of people talking, but in comments, that's the one item that I've not gotten support on. And that's just, from all over the community, that's the one item that people said that they don't support. They like it the way it is. So I'm gonna, but I see it both ways. I do. I see the points of the basically consistency. I do. I see it both ways, but I have not gotten. I don't even see the 50 split. I guess that'll be interesting to see in the voters, but I haven't gotten that at all. I've gotten mostly overwhelmingly negative against the 4 years for everybody. So that's just, I want to throw that out there.
Thank you. Okay, Sheila?
Councilwoman Garner? Yes. Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Councilman Porter?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bell?
No.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Losman?
Yes. I just want to
Motion
see.
carries.
I want the public to tell us. As an aside, before we move on to the next one, we did have some discussion in the committee this morning about what happens if the 4-year question does not pass. And there's been some discussion about, is there another alternative for awarding the 2 4 years and the 2 2 years other than through the vice mayor ballot? And what the committee would like to do is that if the 4-year question does not pass in November, we'd like the opportunity to come back and revisit the issue of how are the 2 separate time frames awarded, and perhaps put that on a March ballot during the Super Tuesday primary in March for the presidential primary, when we would again, potentially see a very large voter turnout. And just, while we're here, the push to get on the November ballot is because we have a governor's race and historically a larger turnout than just a municipal election. So I just want to give you a heads up that, maybe if the 4-year provision is not adopted, and I personally don't think that it will be, the committee would like the opportunity to bring back some recommendations and look at, okay, is there a better way to award the 2 4s and the 2 2s? So we may be faced with that. And we have a rather short time frame there, since the March ballot questions would need to be adopted 60 days prior. So we're looking at early January. So really, we've only got 45 to 60 days from election results to get something back on the table and before council to put on that ballot, just as an aside. Okay, the next issue is the mayor's term of office, which is proposed to be for a 4-year period commencing with the 2009 election. Let's get it on the table. We have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
But for discussion.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Motion by Councilwoman Garner, seconded by Councilman Hodge. Some comments from council. Ms. Garner?
Yes. If you look at it in terms of fairness, if council is to be deemed 4-year terms and it's going to start in 2007, I don't see why the mayor shouldn't start at the same time, because I think mayor and council deserve 4-year term. and they should all start at the same time, just to avoid confusion and keep it consistent.
So,
The simpler the ballot questions are, the better.
Well, that's true, yes. Mr. Hodge?
I agree.
questions?
Who would need to propose, are you proposing an amendment to the motion to have
That's what
this
we'll do.
amended to commence in '07? All right,
Yeah,
so we have a motion to amend the proposal to have that commence in '07 rather than '09. Ms. Gardner is seconding Mr. Hodge's amendment. So I guess first we'll have any discussion on the amendment to bring forward, I guess, that effective date. The mayor's made his wishes known on many occasions, his perspective known. Any comment from council initially? Anything from the public?
The 09 came up kind of as a compromise. During our discussions in the committee, John Burgess, 09 came up as a compromise because the 4-year term for mayor really, if I remember right in committee, it was 4 to 4 or 5 to 4 or something like that, where it did not pass. And I think Chairman Losner threw out, how about 09? And then it passed as that. People on the committee, if I remember right, is that correct, Steve, how that vote went?
Something along those lines. It may have been a tie, and then
Yeah,
there was
the 09
discussion
came
about
out as
the
a
09.
compromise, so I was just wanted to bring that up in the committee, so that council had that thought out there.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, when you look at what other cities are doing, I can't think of too many in Miami-Dade County, nor Broward, where the mayor runs every 2 years. Our sister city to the south, 4-year term. City of South Miami, 4-year term. Carl Gables, 4-year term. I can't think of too many where the mayor runs every 2 years, and there's a reason for that. The mayor is, I think the vice mayor says often, is the face of the community. And as many of you said earlier with the council, as the mayor of the city of Homestead, you come in with a vision. And to implement that vision, you certainly need more than 2 years to do it. Your first year in office, as a first-term mayor with say someone come in with no political experience, you're finding your way. The second year, you campaign it again. It's just enough, not enough time for anyone, not even a council member, to really get anything accomplished, to really go out and tell the community, I should be reelected because I've accomplished this. You're not going to do too much in a year. So I really think to stabilize the government and to give that person an opportunity to realize that vision, 4 years is reasonable for the face of the community to have that opportunity. And I'd like to see that commence on 2007. Now, of course, it's in the hands of the voters, but when you look countywide, and I'm sure we look at it statewide, most politicians in office as mayors have a 4-year term. I can't think of too many cities that have 2-year terms.
Ms. Bell?
Thank you. I agree. I totally agree. And as a matter of, now, in all fairness, I have gotten mixed on this. I've got some people that say they agree and some people that don't agree. But it never, ever, ever has made sense to me that we would have 2 people on council that would get a 4-year term, 2 people that would get a 2-year term, and then the mayor would get a 2-year term while 2 others got a 4-year term. That's the one thing that has never set right with me, that and I've always called the mayor the face of the community, and he's the person who sits in that seat, occupies that seat, is integral, and they do set the vision and they do set the tone. But it's never made sense to me, just on the sheer fact that 2 council members get a 4-year term, but your mayor gets a 2-year term. It's almost like you're really casting a doubt on the trust or the faith in that particular seat, and I think that that's a message that we don't want to send. So I completely agree with you, Mayor.
Mayor, the question before us is to amend this to go forward with 07
That would be the first question, the commencement date.
Assuming it passes, it would be effective 07. Okay, thank you.
Right. Everyone in this room on several occasions has heard my arguments against a 4-year term for mayor, so I'm not going to repeat those. Something about the deaf ears, but we'll let so what? Yeah. So I think first we need to have a ballot on the amendment as to the effective date.
I think you probably could.
We're
going to have to come back and approve the ordinance, the resolution. Once we've made these decisions, I'm going to read the title of the resolution. So I think you could do this in one motion, which is
all right. And that's on the table for the mayor to have a 4-year term commencing with the next election in 2007. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Sheila?
Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Councilman Gordon?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Garner?
Yes.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Losner?
No.
Motion carries.
We flipped on that last vote there, huh?
Okay. All right, the next issue, item D, is as close to what we would call a housekeeping issue as any in this one. And we've hit briefly tonight on the issue that we are prohibited from adjusting residential lines within 1 year of election. This provision recognizes that we may in fact have areas annexed within that prohibition period and gives us the leeway to designate to which seats those areas go. It generally provides that, if you're wholly adjacent or contiguous, you go into that seat, but it gives us the leeway that if an annexed area were split, for example, between the northwest and the southwest, it gives us the leeway to make those line adjustments within that 1 year period. Is that fair assessment, Richard?
I'll move that.
Second motion.
most of them are going to be automatic.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be contiguous to one of the areas.
Right.
It's going to be
Sure.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Bell, second by Mayor Warren. I just want to add that we have had some opinions rendered by our attorneys that if someone has resided within an annexation area for the requisite period of time that we've established to run for office, which is 1 year, and the city comes to that person 1 week before the qualifying date happens, that person cannot be precluded from filing and qualifying from office. And we do have some of the similar language in effect that if we adjust lines and someone has done nothing but stay in their home and has been dispossessed and put it from one district and put into another, they have that one-time option of seeking either seat. So, for example, someone in that area between Campbell Drive and 13th Street, if the line adjustments are adopted, could choose either seat to run for in that first cycle after the line adjustment, so long as they met the other requirements and qualifications to file for office. Any further comments from council on the annexation issue?
And that would fall up under this particular resolution?
That would fall under D, yes. Yes, the full-blown ordinances, I believe, cover that. The line adjustments as well. That was discussed at great length, and it was very, very good points made by members of the public who attended that were affected by the proposed line moves, and those were good questions that needed to be clarified. And there are some court cases out of some other municipalities in North Dade where people who are annexed really, you can't make them second-class citizens and say you haven't been in the city limits for a year, but in practical reality, everything we've annexed and would propose to annex is vacant anyway, so it's not really an issue, but we provided for that. Any public comment? All right, Sheila?
I need to make one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, so based on the resolution, and more so to speak, when there are line adjustments, I think having the lines or creating the seats and adjusting the lines is establishing a sort of an organization to maintain that there is representation for each individual community. So if we establish lines, but then we have an ordinance that allow, just because the line moves, someone can run for either or, then that creates an arbitrary. I could see it being a nightmare for Sheila. You know, on what side of the line are they on, and which seat could they, which seat could they run for? So I don't think that needs to be in. Yeah, that's not a house cleanup. I think that creates somewhat of a campaign or election chaos.
Doesn't that, Richard, really put us in compliance with case law as it's evolved? Yeah. That we're really preempted, if you will, from doing anything different.
Just if somebody comes into the city, they have to have the rights of every other.
Yeah, but we're talking about two different issues here. We're talking about line extensions and line adjustments. If they're already in the city and they qualify for a particular area and the line is adjusted, then at that point they're qualified for where the line has been adjusted to.
No, Richard, I think I misspoke. I think that if you are swallowed by a district,
you're in that district.
You're in that district. You can't go back to your own district.
Right.
And that's
you don't have a choice. You have to go. You have to
the current district
from the district that you live in at the time of qualification. You can't go back to your
like district. The people who are going to be potentially moved out of your district can't go run against you.
And that's because where I was reading it is they could make a choice.
No, that's okay. And I may have misspoke. Yeah. I may have misspoke. They don't get precluded for shortness of time in the new district.
Right. In the new district. Okay. Basically, the 1-year requirement of living in that district is waived for them.
Okay. For the line adjustment. Yeah. I think that, and I may have misspoke when I said that. But you don't get precluded from running where you live at that point.
Because from what I was understanding, it was I could pick whichever seats I wanted.
And that's not.
Yeah, that's why I say it would be election chaos because it would defeat the purpose of having the seats.
Sure.
Councilman Porter?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Garner?
Yes.
Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Losner?
Yes. Thank you for both. All right, the last item, not the last item. Is it the last item? E. Yes. Well, E, the Vice Mayor designation. Richard, you want to take that one?
This is you have to I understand that the Vice Mayor ballot last time was a little confusing, and you'll have to make a decision. What the committee recommended here was, based upon advice from us, that the issue that the Vice Mayor is a designation as opposed to an office. We felt like, in the case that it was challenged, we should try to add some language to the charter to make clear that it's a designation as opposed to an office with a dual office holding problem and other things. And so this ballot question just clarifies and confirms that the Vice Mayor is an accessory to the council position and is not a separate office.
And that goes back to the earlier issue where the campaign and the designation run together.
And here, the thing is that we have gone through a cycle. That this is purely done so that if someone challenges it, we would have a better argument that this is a designation. It's this is nothing that there was any big groundswell about. Right. It's purely from our looking at the issue, and I think actually Councilman Hodge brought this issue up, and we did look at it carefully in terms of dual office holding. I do not feel strongly about it. If you feel that this ballot question can go on the ballot without getting everybody all upset and becoming like the Vice Mayor becoming a big issue, then it helps us if we're ever challenged. If you feel like it's just going to cause a lot of confusion, then don't do it. But the committee sort of went with our advice and said that it'd be better to have it than not have it, and that's what we think. It's up to you as to whether you think it's going to cause a lot of confusion or not.
Councilwoman Bell?
Thank you.
my personal feeling is that it's silly, because I think the question's going to generate more confusion than the actual vice mayor ballot.
That's the question I'm raising.
And
if you feel one
whatever,
way or another...
yeah, whatever the will of the council is on this, I'm fine with. But I think the fact that we have a separate vice mayor ballot where people designate who they choose to be vice mayor, I don't think there's any confusion or any ability to challenge as a dual seat holder, because you can't be the vice mayor without the council.
You have to win your seat to be vice mayor.
You have to be in your seat to occupy that.
For the purposes of the record, I agree with you.
Okay.
But you know what?
I think it's silly.
I totally agree with you that it's not a problem. Totally agree with you, especially if you're not going to put this on the ballot. I totally agree it's not a problem. But so that's where I am.
I agree with Linda. The less questions, the better.
Absolutely.
We got 4 solid questions to ask. Let's limit it to 4. Be done with it.
Okay. So let's eliminate this.
It's good that you agree with me there.
So let's have a motion to defeat it.
I motion.
Wait, yeah.
Yeah. Strike it.
You move to strike this.
I move to strike this.
Move to remove it, okay. We have a motion by Mr. Hodge and a second by Councilwoman Bell to remove proposed ballot question E, vice mayor designation, from consideration. Sheila?
Councilman Porter?
That's 3 times in a row you're supposed to skip. No. Yes.
It's counting.
I'm playing.
Councilwoman Bell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Garner?
Yes.
Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Losner?
Yes.
Okay, that was all sort of practice. I have to read the resolution now, and you'll approve it. And the only change that I'm going to make from what's in the agenda package is the 4-year term for mayor to go from 2009 to 2007.
But now it's one lump sum resolution, so for those of us that voted no on particular ballot questions and yes on the others are going to...
Let your conscience be your guide.
Okay.
The resolution of the City Council of the City of Homestead, Florida, providing for the submission of a series of proposed amendments to the city charter to the city's electors as a result of the City Council's review of and action upon recommendations of the Charter Review Committee. Submitting proposed charter amendments concerning conversion of general council member seats into residential area council seats, term of office of council members, term of office of the mayor, annexation of residential seats. Providing requisite ballot language for submission to the electorate, following election of the proposed amendments to the city charter to be held on Tuesday, the 7th of November, 2006, providing for election, providing for balloting, providing for inclusion in the city charter, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Hodge, second by Mayor Warren. Any further comment from council? Any further comment from the public? Any final comment from council? Sheila?
Councilwoman Bell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Garner? Yes. Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Councilman Porter?
Yes.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Losner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes my business, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. That concludes the special call. Thank you all very much for coming.
I think I'm going to take this home with me. Keep it. I'm not going to pretend like there's been overwhelming, but there has been a handful of people